The Galactic Council station floated in the darkness of space like a giant crystal flower. Inside its massive halls, representatives from hundreds of alien worlds gathered for another day of discussions and agreements. The station orbited a peaceful planet called Axiom Prime, chosen because no species claimed it as their own. Captain Ji-Won Park stood near a large window in the human section of the station, watching ships come and go. She commanded a diplomatic vessel called Aurora's Dawn. For 15 years she had served Earth proudly, traveling between stars and meeting countless alien species. Today felt like any other day. She was wrong. In the main council chamber, Ambassador Minho Kim sat at the human delegation table. His hair had turned gray over the past decade of service. He was known across the galaxy as a patient man who always sought peaceful solutions. Other ambassadors respected him. Even species that disliked humans acknowledged his fairness. The day's meeting concerned mining rights in a distant region called the Outer Rim. Several species wanted to extract valuable minerals from unclaimed asteroids. The discussions were calm and professional. Everyone expected an agreement by evening. On the Aurora's Dawn, Dr. Yoonji Choi worked in her laboratory. She studied alien biology, learning how different species lived and functioned. She loved her work. Understanding other forms of life fascinated her. She believed knowledge brought species together. Her door chimed. Lieutenant Daeho Song entered, his young face troubled. "Doctor, we just received an emergency signal. It is from the New Horizon." The New Horizon was a colony transport ship. It carried 3,000 people to a farming world called Terra Nova 3. Families, teachers, engineers, children, all civilians seeking a new home among the stars. Unji knew several people aboard. Good people. Peaceful people. "What kind of emergency?" Unji asked. "They are under attack. The transmission is breaking up, but it sounds bad." In the council chamber, Ambassador Minho's communication device vibrated. He glanced at the message and went pale. His hands gripped the table edge. The alien sitting next to him, a kind being named Korra from the Felinian species, noticed his distress. "Ambassador Kim, are you well?" Korra asked. Minho could not speak. On his screen, a message from his daughter Hana played. She was a teacher on the New Horizon. Her voice trembled with fear. "Dad, they are shooting at us." "We surrendered, but they keep firing. The children are scared." "I am scared." "We did not do anything wrong. We are just teachers and farmers." "Why are they doing this?" "The ship is breaking apart." "I love you, Dad. Tell Mom I love her too." "Tell her I." The message ended. Static. Silence. Nothing more. Minho stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Other ambassadors turned to look. His face showed something they had never seen before. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper and more terrible. Across the station, alarms began sounding in the human sections. Captain Ji-Won ran to the bridge of her ship. Screens filled with data. "None of it good, Captain." The New Horizon stopped broadcasting. "All life signs are gone. How far are we from their last position?" Ji-Won demanded. 2 hours at maximum speed, then we leave now." "Full speed?" The Aurora's Dawn broke away from the station, its engines burning bright as it raced toward the coordinates. Dr. Yoonji and Lieutenant Daeho strapped into their stations. Neither spoke. What could they say? 2 hours felt like 2 years. When they arrived at the location, Captain Ji-Won wished they had never come. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of hull. Personal belongings, bodies, so many bodies. Some were children. Frozen in the vacuum of space, their faces still showing fear. Dr. Yoonji worked quickly, analyzing the wreckage. Her scientific training helped her stay focused, but tears ran down her face. Daeho scanned for weapon signatures. What he found made his blood run cold. Thraxian military plasma cannons. Multiple warships. They hit every section of the transport. Life support, engines, habitation modules. Everything. Could it have been an accident? Captain Ji-Won asked, though she already knew the answer. "No, Captain. We found the black box." The New Horizon was broadcasting surrender codes in 17 different languages, including Thraxian. They never entered Thraxian space. They were nowhere near any military zones. This was murder. Back on the council station, Ambassador Minho stood before the full assembly. The chamber held representatives from every major species. At the front sat the High Arbiter, an ancient being made of living crystal named Zelnari. Beside the human delegation sat Counselor Vexthor, the Thraxian representative. Vexthor was a large reptilian creature with scales like armor. He sat calmly, showing no concern. His species, the Thraxians, controlled 200 worlds. Their military had never lost a war. They feared nothing and no one. Ambassador Kim, the High Arbiter, said in a voice like wind through crystal, "We have heard preliminary reports of an incident involving a human vessel and Thraxian forces. The Council will investigate fully." An incident? Minho's voice was quiet, but every being in the chamber heard it clearly. 3,000 civilians are dead. That is not an incident. That is a massacre. Vexthor made a dismissive gesture. The transport violated our territorial boundaries. It refused inspection. We acted within our rights, that is a lie, Minho said. The chamber went silent. In 10,000 years of Council history, no one had ever called another ambassador a liar so directly. Such accusations went through official channels, required evidence, took years to process. Ambassador Kim, the High Arbiter, warned, "You must follow proper procedures." Proper procedures? Minho pulled out a data device. "My daughter sent me a message before she died. She was a teacher, 26 years old. She spent her last moments comforting frightened children, while your warriors murdered them all." He turned to Vexthor. "You will answer for this." The Thraxian laughed. "Humans. So emotional, so weak. The Council will assign blame. We will pay your reparations and life will continue. This is how civilized species handle disagreements." Minho looked at the creature for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. No. Vexthor seemed amused. "Humanity does not negotiate with murderers. The Council will do as it wishes, but Earth will have justice. Real justice." Minho turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the Council erupted in confused discussions. Nothing like this had ever happened. Species did not refuse Council mediation. They did not walk away from negotiations. The system had worked for 10 millennia, but Ambassador Minho Kim was done with systems. His daughter was dead. 3,000 innocents were dead, and someone would answer for it. On the Aurora's dawn, Captain Jiwon received new orders from Earth. Her crew gathered around as she read them aloud. All human vessels are to withdraw from Council oversight immediately. All human citizens in Thraxian space are to evacuate within 72 hours. All diplomatic relations with the Thraxian Empire are suspended indefinitely. Dr. Yoonji looked up from her station. "What does this mean?" Captain Jiwon met her eyes. "It means we are going to war." The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 24 hours after the New Horizon massacre. Every major species sent their representatives. The massive chamber buzzed with activity. Translation devices hummed as they processed hundreds of different languages. Gravity generators adjusted to accommodate species from heavy and light worlds alike. High Arbiter Zelnari floated at the center of the chamber, his crystalline body reflecting light in rainbow patterns. He was ancient beyond measure. He had presided over the Council for 3,000 years. In all that time, he had never faced a situation like this. Councillor Vexthor arrived with an honor guard of Thraxian warriors. Their armor gleamed. Their weapons remained holstered but visible. It was a statement of power. The Thraxian Empire wanted everyone to remember their strength. Vexthor showed no shame, no regret. He walked with his head high. Ambassador Minho sat at the human table. Dark circles ringed his eyes. He had not slept since receiving his daughter's final message. Captain Jiwon stood behind him, along with Dr. Yoonji and Lieutenant Daeho. They had brought evidence. They had brought truth. The question was whether anyone would care. Representative Cora from the Felinian species approached Minho before the session began. Her cat-like features showed genuine concern. The Felinians were peaceful traders who valued life highly. She had known Minho for years. They were friends. "Minho, I am so sorry for your loss." Cora placed a paw on his shoulder. "The Council will find justice, will they?" Minho asked quietly. "Or will they find a compromise?" Cora hesitated. She wanted to reassure him but could not lie. "The Council does seek balance, balance." Minho repeated the word like it tasted bitter. 3,000 lives on one side. What balance is that? Before Cora could answer, the High Arbiter called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We gather to address a tragedy. The human transport New Horizon was destroyed. All aboard perished. Thraxian forces have been identified as responsible. We must determine accountability and appropriate response. Lieutenant Deho stepped forward with data files. May I present evidence? The High Arbiter nodded. Proceed. Holographic displays filled the chamber. Navigation logs showed the New Horizons course. It never approached Thraxian territory. Communication records displayed surrender signals broadcast in 17 languages. Weapons analysis confirmed Thraxian military plasma signatures. Timestamps proved the attack lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes of sustained fire against an unarmed civilian vessel. Dr. Yunji added her findings. The attack pattern targeted life support systems first. They wanted to kill everyone aboard. This was not a warning shot. This was not an accident. This was deliberate mass murder. The chamber fell silent. Even species with no concept of family understood what they were seeing. The evidence was absolute, undeniable, horrifying. Then Ambassador Minho played his daughter's message. Hana's voice filled the chamber. Her fear, her confusion, her final declaration of love. When the message cut to static, many representatives looked away. Some wept. Others trembled with anger. Counselor Vexthor rose to speak. His voice held no remorse. The human vessel ignored our hails. In times of heightened security, we must protect our borders. The deaths are regrettable, but no. Minho's voice cut through the chamber. Do not dare call this regrettable. Do not hide behind security concerns. You murdered children. You murdered teachers and farmers. You murdered them while they begged for mercy in your own language. Chancellor Braun, a massive Titanoid representative, spoke up. His species valued order and stability above all else. Ambassador Kim, we understand your grief. But we must follow procedure. The Council will what? Minho interrupted. We'll debate for months. We'll assign a committee. We'll eventually decide that reparations and apologies are sufficient. The High Arbiter's voice remained calm. That is indeed our traditional approach. The Thraxian Empire will pay financial compensation to the families of the deceased. They will issue formal apologies. The ship captain responsible will face tribunal. These processes take time but ensure justice without escalating to warfare. How much time? Minho demanded. Chancellor Braun consulted his records. Based on precedent, full resolution should occur within 15 to 20 years. 20 years. Minho laughed without humor. My daughter will have been dead for 20 years before anyone faces justice. The families will wait 2 decades for acknowledgement of their loss. And in the end, the Thraxian Empire will pay some credits and nothing will actually change. Representative Cora tried to mediate. Minho, I know this seems inadequate, but it prevents war. It maintains peace across the galaxy. We must think of the greater good. The greater good. Minho turned to face the entire assembly. Tell me, representatives of the Galactic Council, how many other massacres have been swept aside for the greater good? How many times has this council chosen convenience over justice? How many monsters sit in this chamber right now, confident they can murder with impunity because the council will protect them? The accusations hung in the air. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The High Arbiter's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. Ambassador Kim, the High Arbiter said slowly, are you refusing the council's mediation? Minho took a deep breath. He looked at Vexthor, who watched with barely concealed smugness. He looked at Cora, whose eyes pleaded with him to reconsider. He looked at Chancellor Braun, who represented 10,000 years of precedent and tradition. Then Minho thought of Hana, 26 years old, full of dreams, dead in the void because monsters thought they could act without consequence. Yes, Earth formally rejects the Council's proposed resolution. We will not wait 20 years. We will not accept financial compensation. We will not participate in this charade of justice. The chamber erupted. Nothing like this had happened in recorded history. Species did not reject Council authority. The system was absolute, universal, mandatory. Ambassador Kim, the High Arbiter's voice carried warning. If you refuse mediation, Earth will face sanctions. You will be expelled from the Council. You will lose access to trade routes, to shared technology, to the protection of Council law. Then Earth withdraws voluntarily. Minho pulled out a prepared document. This is official notice. Humanity relinquishes its Council membership effective immediately. We will pursue justice through our own means. We will hold the Thraxian Empire accountable, and we will not negotiate with murderers. Vexthor finally showed emotion. He stood, his voice dripping with contempt. You are fools. The Thraxian Empire controls 200 worlds. Our fleets number in the thousands. Your entire species has what, 60 colonies? A few hundred warships? You will be crushed. And when you come crawling back begging for mercy, we will remember this insult." Captain Jiwan stepped forward. Her voice was steady and cold. "Then you should have thought of that before you murdered our children. You should have thought of that before you ignored their surrender. You should have thought of that before you made humanity choose between our principles and your comfort." She turned to the High Arbiter. "With respect, the Council has failed. You have created a system where the strong can prey on the weak, knowing the consequences will be minimal. You have made justice a negotiation rather than an absolute. Humanity will no longer participate in that system." The human delegation walked out together. Behind them, the Council descended into chaos. Some representatives argued for immediate sanctions against Earth. Others, like Cora, sat in stunned silence. A few, those who had suffered under the current system, watched the humans leave with something like hope in their eyes. Outside the chamber, Minho activated his communication device. He sent a simple message to Earth. "The Council has been notified. Proceed with planned operations." All across human space, ships began moving. Not fleeing, not hiding, positioning. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. They were not the most technologically advanced. But they had one quality that 10,000 years of council politics had forgotten the value of. They meant what they said. 48 hours after leaving the Galactic Council, Earth made its position clear to the galaxy. Prime Minister Yuna Lee stood before cameras in the United Earth Government building. Her broadcast reached every inhabited system through relay stations and quantum communication networks. "Citizens of Earth and humanity across the stars," she began, her voice firm and clear. 2 days ago, 3,000 of our people were murdered. They were teachers, farmers, engineers, and children. They were unarmed. They surrendered. They begged for mercy in 17 languages. They were killed anyway. The Prime Minister paused, letting her words sink in. "The Galactic Council offered us their traditional justice. Wait 20 years. Accept money. Forgive and forget. We reject this offer. Humanity does not negotiate with murderers. The Thraxian Empire will face justice. Real justice. Human justice. Any species that interferes will be considered an enemy. We did not choose this path, but we will walk it to the end." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. Some species applauded humanity's courage. Others predicted their extinction within months. The Thraxian Empire laughed. They had never lost a war. They controlled 200 worlds. They fielded thousands of warships. What could humanity possibly do against such power? They were about to find out. Admiral Hyan Kang stood on the bridge of the EDF Determination, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. He was a thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had spent 40 years in Earth's defense forces. He had studied warfare not as sport but as philosophy. To him, every battle was a moral question with practical consequences. Around him, holographic displays showed the position of every human ship in known space. There were fewer than the Thraxians possessed. Much fewer. But numbers alone did not determine victory. Strategy, determination, and moral clarity mattered more. Director Taehyung Nam materialized on the comm screen. He ran Earth's intelligence network. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes held cold fire. "Admiral, all our assets in Thraxian space are activated. We have complete intelligence on their military infrastructure. Command locations, supply routes, communication hubs, everything." Hyun nodded. "And our people?" "Every human civilian evacuated from Thraxian territory 12 hours ago. They are safe. Good." The Admiral turned to his tactical officer. "Begin Operation Clear Conscience." Representative Cora sat in her quarters on the council station, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about Ambassador Minho's face when he walked out of the chamber. She had known him for years. He was kind, patient, diplomatic, but grief and rage had transformed him into something else. Something determined and terrible. Her communication device chimed. A priority message from her intelligence service. She opened it and went pale. Across Thraxian space, 12 high-ranking military officers had vanished in the past 6 hours. Not killed, vanished. Their security teams found no bodies, no evidence, nothing. Among the missing were 3 of the commanders who had ordered attacks on human vessels in the past year. Cora knew what this meant. Humanity had started its war, but not with fleets and bombardments, with something far more frightening. Colonel Soman Bayek moved through the darkness of a Thraxian military compound with her team. They were humanity's best special operations soldiers. Each had trained for years in infiltration, extraction, and precision operations. Tonight they had a simple mission. Find Admiral Krathnok, capture him, bring him to justice. Krathnok had personally ordered the attack on the New Horizon. He had laughed about it afterward, according to intercepted communications. He called humans weak and deserving of extinction. He said killing them was like swatting insects. Soman found him in his quarters, surrounded by guards and security systems that should have made him untouchable. Should have. Human technology had advanced beyond what most species realized. Stealth suits that bent light, weapons that disrupted neural function without killing, training that emphasized precision over force. The guards never saw them coming. Within 3 minutes, Krathnok sat on his own floor, bound and gagged. Soman knelt beside him. She showed him a photograph. The New Horizon before its destruction. Families smiling. Children playing. Teachers laughing. You called them insects. Her voice was soft and cold. You murdered 3,000 people. You laughed about it. Now you will face trial. You will face justice. And you will understand that humanity does not negotiate with murderers. They took him. By morning, he was in a human detention facility awaiting trial. By afternoon, the Thraxian Empire realized what was happening. Humanity was not attacking armies. They were targeting individuals. The ones responsible. The ones who ordered atrocities. The ones who thought they were untouchable. Counselor Vexthor received the news in his office. Admiral Krathnok captured. General Dexvor vanished. Commander Silrath taken. 12 officers gone in 24 hours. He felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. He immediately contacted the Thraxian military command. Deploy the fleet. Destroy every human ship you find. Show them what happens when insects challenge an empire. The Thraxian fleet mobilized. 300 warships. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Carriers that deployed thousands of fighters. Cruisers bristling with weapons. They moved toward human territory, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Hyan watched them come. His fleet numbered only 70 ships, but he had no intention of fighting them directly. Humanity had learned from thousands of years of warfare on Earth. Sometimes the strongest army loses because they fight the wrong way. He gave the order. All ships execute dispersal pattern. Avoid direct engagement, target logistics and communications only. The mission is not to defeat their fleet. The mission is to make them unable to operate. Captain Jiwan commanded the Aurora's Dawn, now leading a squadron of fast attack vessels. They did not wait for the Thraxian fleet to reach human worlds. Instead, they went hunting, not for warships, for supply depots, for fuel tankers, for ammunition transports, for communication relays. The Thraxian fleet was powerful, but power required supply lines, required communication, required maintenance, required logistics. Humanity began dismantling all of it. Dr. Yunji worked in a research facility coordinating with other scientists. They studied Thraxian biology not to kill them, but to understand them. She developed non-lethal weapons that targeted Thraxian neural systems. Soldiers hit by these weapons fell unconscious without permanent harm. It was not mercy. It was precision. Humanity wanted the guilty punished. They had no quarrel with ordinary soldiers following orders. Lieutenant Deho coordinated the tactical network. Information from thousands of sources flowed through his systems. He saw patterns the Thraxians could not imagine. Their fleet moved predictably. Their commanders thought in traditional terms. They expected humanity to defend fixed positions, to protect colonies, to act like every other species in the galaxy. But humanity had no intention of playing by those rules. 3 weeks into the conflict, the Thraxian fleet reached a human colony world. They prepared to bombard it from orbit, to teach humanity a lesson about challenging superior power. But when they entered the system, they found it empty. The colony was evacuated, every human gone. All that remained were automated defenses and a recorded message. Admiral Hyan's face appeared on every Thraxian screen. You came here to kill more of our civilians, to murder more of our people, but we do not leave our people where murderers can reach them. You want to fight? Fight our military. You want to prove your strength? Face armed opponents who can fight back. But if you target another civilian, If you harm one more innocent, we will not stop until your entire empire is nothing but dust and memory." The message ended. The Thraxian fleet commander laughed. Empty threats from a dying species. He ordered bombardment of the empty colony anyway. A statement. A lesson. The bombardment never happened. Human ships appeared from nowhere, fast, precise. They did not engage the main fleet. Instead, they destroyed every supply ship in the convoy, every fuel tanker, every repair vessel. Within an hour, the mighty Thraxian fleet was stranded. They had weapons but no ammunition. They had ships but no fuel to return home. They had pride but no way to escape. Admiral Hyon offered them terms. Surrender. You will be treated well. You will face no charges. You are soldiers following orders. We have no quarrel with you, or stay here and starve. The choice is yours. After 3 days, the entire fleet surrendered. 300 warships, 50,000 Thraxian soldiers, all captured without killing a single one. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just defeated the Thraxian Empire's primary battle fleet. Without a major battle, without massive casualties, with strategy and determination and the absolute conviction that justice was non-negotiable, and they had only just begun. The fall of the Thraxian battle fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Military analysts across 100 worlds tried to understand what had happened. How had humanity defeated 300 warships with only 70? How had they captured 50,000 soldiers without major battles? The answer troubled them more than the defeat itself. Humanity fought differently. They did not value glory or dominance. They valued results. They did not seek honor in battle. They sought justice through any means necessary. Most importantly, they understood that the point of war was not to win battles. It was to remove threats permanently. Colonel Somin Beck and her teams continued their operations across Thraxian space. Every officer who had participated in attacks on civilians found themselves facing human justice. Some surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight. A few managed to escape temporarily. But Colonel Somin was patient. She had a list. She had resources. She had time. Most importantly, she had absolute conviction in her purpose. On the Thraxian military world of Thraxis Minor, General Kexodon commanded the strongest remaining defense force. He was a veteran of 20 wars. He had conquered 15 worlds for the Empire. He believed humans were lucky amateurs who would break against real military power. He fortified his position. Orbital platforms, ground-based weapons, shield generators, millions of soldiers, the strongest defenses in Thraxian space. He broadcast a challenge to humanity. Come and die against our walls. Show the galaxy what happens to insects who challenge their superiors. Admiral Hyon received the challenge aboard the Determination. His staff expected him to ignore it. Why attack a fortified position? Why fight where the enemy was strongest? But Hyon understood something important. The galaxy was watching. They needed to see what humanity meant by justice. We will accept his challenge, but not in the way he expects. Human ships approached Thraxis Minor in force. General Kexton watched them come with satisfaction. Finally a real battle. Finally a chance to crush these upstart humans and restore Thraxian honor. His weapons locked on. His shields activated. His soldiers prepared for glorious combat. The human fleet stopped just outside weapons range. They did not advance. They did not fire. They simply waited. Then the bombardment began. But not against the military installations. Against the infrastructure that supported them. Power generation plants, water purification systems, food storage facilities, communication arrays, medical centers. Everything the military needed to function. The attacks were precise, surgical. Every target destroyed was military or dual use. Civilian structures remained untouched. Schools, hospitals, homes, all undamaged. But without power, without food, without medicine, the military installations became prisons rather than fortresses. Captain Jiwan led the attacks personally. Her crew had perfected the art of precision strikes. Lieutenant Deho's targeting solutions were flawless. Dr. Yunji advised on what infrastructure was essential versus what could be spared. They destroyed what needed destroying and nothing more. General Kexdan raged at his screens. His weapons had no targets. Human ships stayed outside his range. His soldiers had food for weeks, but his communication systems were dead. His shield still functioned, but his power was failing. He could not call for help, could not coordinate with other forces, could not even send messages to his own units across the planet. Then Colonel Samin's teams infiltrated the command center. They bypassed every security system, every guard, every defense. They reached the general in his own headquarters and presented him with evidence of his crimes. Images of civilian transports he had destroyed, records of colonies he had bombarded, names of the innocent he had killed. You are under arrest for crimes against humanity and violation of the laws of war. You will receive a fair trial. You will have legal representation. You will have every right we would give our own citizens. But you will face justice, the general tried to fight. His guards tried to protect him. But human technology and training proved superior. Within minutes, he was in custody. Within an hour, he was aboard a human ship, heading toward Earth and trial. Before leaving, Colonel Somin broadcast a message to the Thraxian forces on the planet. Your commander is gone. Your infrastructure is destroyed. Your fleet cannot help you. But you are soldiers, not murderers. We have no quarrel with you. Surrender now. You will be treated well. You will be released after the war. Or stay here and starve. The choice is yours. You have 12 hours to decide. 8 hours later, the entire garrison surrendered. 2 million Thraxian soldiers, all captured without killing a single one. The fortress world fell without a major battle. Across the galaxy, military commanders studied what humanity had done. They had not fought strength against strength. They had bypassed strength entirely. They had targeted the systems that made strength possible. They had removed the guilty and accepted the surrender of the innocent. It was warfare as moral imperative rather than conquest. On the Galactic Council station, High Arbiter Zelnari called an emergency session. Chancellor Braun attended. Representative Cora attended. Even some Thraxian representatives attended, though Councillor Vexithor remained conspicuously absent. We must discuss the human campaign. Chancellor Braun spoke heavily. They have defeated 2 major Thraxian forces with minimal casualties on both sides. They are dismantling a galactic power through strategy and precision. This changes everything. Representative Cora added her thoughts. They are proving a point, that justice does not require brutality, that accountability does not require genocide. They are showing us what we should have done decades ago. The High Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with agitation, but they have rejected council authority. They are operating outside all established law. If we allow this to continue, what prevents other species from doing the same? What happens to galactic order? A small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. A representative from a minor species called the Severians. They had been victims of Thraxian aggression years ago. The council had mediated. Reparations were paid. But the Thraxians had never truly been held accountable. Perhaps galactic order needs to change. Perhaps the humans are right. Perhaps we have been negotiating with murderers for too long. The words hung in the chamber. Other small species began murmuring agreement. Victims of the current system. Species who had accepted inadequate justice because they had no choice. The council's comfortable order was cracking. Back in human space, Ambassador Minho worked tirelessly. He coordinated with Admiral Hyon. He communicated with neutral species. He ensured captured Thraxian soldiers were treated well. He documented every action humanity took. He wanted history to record this correctly. Humanity did not seek war. They sought justice. They did not seek to conquer. They sought to hold accountable those who had murdered innocents. Every action had to reflect that principle. Dr. Yunji established medical facilities for wounded Thraxian soldiers. She treated them with the same care she gave human patients. When some of them asked why she helped enemies, her answer was simple. You are not my enemies. You are soldiers. The ones who murdered civilians are my enemies. The ones who ordered those murders are my enemies. You simply followed orders. That does not make you guilty. Her compassion confused many Thraxians. They expected brutality, expected revenge, expected the same behavior their own empire showed toward defeated foes. Instead, they found mercy paired with justice, forgiveness for soldiers, accountability for war criminals. It was a combination they had never encountered. The Aurora's dawn sustained damage during a raid on a Thraxian supply depot. A lucky shot breached their hull. 3 crew members died. Captain Jiwan herself was injured, but she refused evacuation. The mission was not complete. There were still guilty parties to find, still justice to serve. Lieutenant Deho took over tactical operations during her recovery. he discovered something troubling in the intercepted communications. The Thraxian Empire was preparing a desperate gambit. They planned to target human colonies with long-range weapons. Not to conquer them, simply to kill civilians, to make humanity feel the same pain they inflicted. He brought the intelligence to Admiral Hyan immediately. The Admiral studied the data in silence. Then he gave new orders. All available ships are to intercept those weapons. All of them. I do not care if it leaves our other operations vulnerable. I do not care if it costs us ships. We will not allow them to murder more innocents. That is why we fight. That is what separates us from them. The human fleet moved to intercept. They knew it was a trap. They knew the Thraxians expected exactly this response. They knew they might lose ships and people. But they went anyway, because protecting civilians was not optional. It was the entire point. The battle was fierce. Human ships fought desperately to stop weapons aimed at defenseless colonies. They succeeded. Every missile destroyed, every bomber shot down, every threat eliminated. But the cost was high. 20 human ships destroyed, 3,000 sailors dead. Admiral Hyan addressed the fleet afterward. His voice was heavy with grief. We lost good people today, brave people, people who died protecting others. Remember them, honor them, and remember why they died. Not for glory, not for conquest, for justice, for the principle that the innocent must be protected. That is worth dying for. That is worth living for. That is why we will win. 6 months after the New Horizon massacre, the Thraxian Empire lay broken. Not destroyed, not conquered, broken. Their military infrastructure was dismantled. Their war criminals were captured or dead. Their government collapsed under the weight of its own corruption and incompetence. But their civilians lived. Their homes stood. Their children went to school. Humanity had proven something extraordinary. That justice and mercy could coexist. That accountability did not require genocide. That the guilty could be punished while the innocent were spared. Counselor Vexthor spent those 6 months running. He fled from world to world, always one step ahead of Colonel Soman's teams. But running had consequences. His power vanished. His allies abandoned him. His empire no longer protected him. He was just another war criminal trying to escape judgment. Finally, cornered at the border of council space, he attempted to claim asylum. He stood before a minor council outpost, demanding protection under galactic law. He had committed no crimes, he claimed. He had only defended his empire's interests. Surely the council would protect him from human barbarism. Colonel Somin arrived before the council could respond. She presented a warrant. She presented evidence. She presented testimony from survivors. Vexthor had not just defended interests. He had ordered the New Horizon attack personally. He had celebrated the murders. He had encouraged similar actions against other species. The council outpost commander faced an impossible choice: grant asylum and lose all moral authority, or hand over a former counselor to human justice. He chose the latter. Vexthor was taken into custody. The trial was held on Earth, broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched. Some expected a show trial, expected humanity to execute him immediately, expected revenge disguised as justice. They were wrong. Vexthor received lawyers, Thraxian legal experts who understood his rights under both human and galactic law. He received fair process. Every piece of evidence was examined. Every witness questioned. Every defense heard. The trial lasted 3 months. It was thorough, exhaustive, absolutely fair. Ambassador Minho attended every day. He watched the being who had ordered his daughter's death sit in comfort, protected by the very system he had tried to destroy. It hurt, but it was necessary. Justice meant process. It meant rules. It meant treating even monsters as beings deserving of fair judgment. The evidence was overwhelming. Communications intercepted, orders documented, witnesses from his own staff. Vexthor had not just approved the New Horizon attack. He had designed it. He had wanted maximum casualties, had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about challenging Thraxian power. His own lawyers could not dispute the facts. They argued extenuating circumstances, cultural differences, political pressure, but the facts remained. 3,000 civilians murdered, under his direct orders. While they begged for mercy, the verdict came after careful deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Crimes against humanity, violation of the laws of war, mass murder. The sentence: life imprisonment, not execution. Humanity had abolished death penalties decades ago, even for the worst criminals. Even for monsters. Vexthor would spend the rest of his life in prison. Comfortable by most standards, fed, sheltered, alive, but never free. Never powerful. Never able to harm anyone again. The galaxy watched and learned. Justice did not require blood. It required accountability. It required removing dangerous people from positions where they could cause harm. It required ensuring they faced consequences for their actions. On the Galactic Council station, everything had changed. High Arbiter Zelnari called a historic session. Every major species attended. Every minor species attended. The chamber was full for the first time in centuries. The High Arbiter spoke slowly, his crystalline voice heavy with meaning. For 10,000 years, this council has maintained peace through negotiation, through compromise, through patience. These methods have served us well in many cases. But we have also failed. We have allowed injustice to persist because confronting it was uncomfortable. We have let the strong prey on the weak because maintaining stability seemed more important than enforcing morality. He paused, letting the admission sink in. Humanity showed us another way. They refused to negotiate with murderers. They pursued justice without compromise. They held the guilty accountable while protecting the innocent. They fought a war with moral clarity we had forgotten was possible. And they won. Representative Cora stood. With the Council's permission, I proposed the creation of the Office of Accountability, a new branch dedicated to investigating and prosecuting crimes against civilian populations, based on human legal frameworks. With the power to act swiftly when injustice occurs, Chancellor Braun added his support. I second this proposal. The Thraxian Empire committed atrocities we ignored because following our traditional process seemed more important than stopping murders. We cannot allow that to happen again. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Council history, every species agreed. The Office of Accountability would have real power, real authority, real ability to stop war criminals before they could act. Then came the question everyone wondered about. Would humanity return? The High Arbiter addressed the empty human seats. We formally invite Earth to rejoin the Galactic Council, not as it was, but as it should be. As partners in building a better system, as the species who reminded us that justice is not negotiable, the invitation was broadcast across all channels. On Earth, debates raged. Some wanted nothing to do with the Council. They had shown their true nature. Why trust them again? Others argued for engagement. The Council was changing. Refusing to participate would abandon that progress. Prime Minister Yuna Lee consulted widely. Admiral Hyan argued for cautious re-engagement. They had made their point. Now they needed to help ensure the changes became permanent. Colonel Soman was skeptical. Words were easy. Actions mattered. Dr. Yunji supported rejoining. She believed in the possibility of change. Ambassador Minho was offered his old position. He initially refused. Too much pain. Too many memories. But Captain Jiwon convinced him otherwise. Your daughter was a teacher. She believed in building better futures. Walking away now would dishonor that. We need you there. Making sure the changes are real. Making sure no other parent loses a child to preventable injustice. Minho agreed. But with conditions. Humanity would maintain independent military forces. Would reserve the right to act unilaterally if the Council failed to address threats to civilians. Would never again accept inadequate justice for the sake of convenience. The Council accepted every condition. They needed humanity more than humanity needed them. The moral authority humanity had earned could not be ignored or dismissed. The Thraxian Empire fragmented into smaller states. New governments formed, democratic, accountable, led by a generation horrified by what their predecessors had done. They sought reconciliation not through empty words but through concrete actions. A young Thraxian diplomat named Kexral came to Earth. She was the daughter of one of the executed war criminals. She could not undo her father's crimes, but she could dedicate her life to ensuring they never happened again. She requested assignment to work with Ambassador Minho. Minho agreed. Not easily, not without pain, but he saw in her efforts genuine remorse, genuine determination, the possibility that even the children of monsters could choose better paths. Captain Jiwon and a reformed Thraxian vessel began joint patrols of the border regions. Former enemies working together, not forgetting the past, not pretending it did not happen, but refusing to let it define the future. Dr. Yunji established an institute for interspecies understanding, teaching the next generation how to recognize injustice, how to stand against it, how to build systems that protected the vulnerable instead of enabling the powerful. Lieutenant Deho accepted a position at the new Council Office of Accountability. His tactical mind now worked to prevent atrocities before they happened, to identify threats before they materialized. To ensure the galaxy truly learned from what had happened, Admiral Hyon retired to write. His philosophical works on justice and military ethics became required reading across the galaxy. His central thesis was simple: strength must serve justice. Power must protect the weak, and sometimes refusing to negotiate is the most moral choice possible. 1 year after the New Horizon massacre, humanity returned to the Galactic Council. Not as supplicants, not as one voice among many, but as the species who had changed everything, who had reminded the galaxy that justice was absolute, that some things were non-negotiable, that protecting the innocent was not optional. Ambassador Minho gave his first speech to the Reformed Council. We return, not because we need you, but because the galaxy needs us to participate in building something better. We will work with you. We will compromise on many things, but never on justice, never on protecting civilians, never on holding the guilty accountable. If that makes us difficult partners, so be it. We would rather be difficult than complicit. The Council accepted his terms. They had learned, finally, after 10,000 years, that convenience was not worth moral compromise. That stability built on ignored injustice was no stability at all. That sometimes someone had to refuse to negotiate with murderers, and the galaxy was better for it. 10 years after the New Horizon massacre, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council still existed. Representatives still gathered to discuss trade, borders, and cooperation. But the fundamental nature of how they operated had changed forever. Humanity had taught them a lesson they would never forget. The Office of Accountability had investigated 24 cases in its first decade. War criminals who once thought themselves untouchable now faced real consequences. Species who preyed on the weak discovered that the galaxy would no longer ignore their crimes. The Council's comfortable tolerance of injustice had ended. Terra Nova 3, the colony the New Horizon had been traveling to, finally received its population. Ships arrived carrying families, teachers, engineers, and children. Among them were Thraxian refugees, families fleeing the chaos of their empire's collapse, seeking new lives in a galaxy that offered second chances. The colony's central square held a monument, black stone carved with 3,000 names. Every person who died aboard the New Horizon. Their faces, their ages, their dreams. At the base, an inscription in both human and Thraxian languages: they died because monsters thought power meant immunity. They are remembered because humanity refused to accept that. May we never forget. May we never forgive. May we always protect the innocent, Ambassador. Minho Kim stood before that monument on the 10th anniversary. His hair was completely white now, his face lined with years of difficult work, but his eyes still held the determination that had changed the galaxy. Beside him stood Kexral, his Thraxian assistant. She had proven herself over the years, dedicated, honest, tireless in her efforts to build something better. Every year I come here. Every year I remember Hana. Minho's voice was quiet. She would have taught at the school they built over there, would have helped these children learn and grow. Instead, she is stone, and memory. Kexral placed a claw on his shoulder. Because of her death, thousands of others live. Because of what you did, the galaxy changed. That does not make the loss acceptable, but it gives it meaning. Minho nodded. Meaning. Yes. That helps. Captain Jiwon Park commanded a new ship now, the Aurora's Hope, built to honor the original Aurora's Dawn, which had been retired after years of hard service. She still patrolled the border regions, still protected civilian shipping, still worked alongside Thraxian partners who had proven themselves trustworthy. The scars of war remained on her body and mind, but she had found purpose in the aftermath, not in fighting, but in ensuring the peace was worth the cost of achieving it. Her crew came from 12 species now, all dedicated to the principle that civilians deserved protection. That justice was absolute, Doctor. Yoonji Choi ran the Institute for Galactic Understanding on Terra Nova 3. Students from across the galaxy came to study, to learn. to understand how to build systems that prevented atrocity rather than enabling it. Her lectures filled auditoriums. Her books were translated into hundreds of languages. She taught a simple principle. Understanding other species does not mean accepting their crimes. Compassion for individuals does not mean tolerating systemic injustice. We can be kind and uncompromising, merciful and absolute. These are not contradictions. They are necessities. Among her students sat both humans and Thraxians, learning together, debating together, building friendships that would have been impossible a decade ago. Not forgetting history, using it to build something better. Lieutenant Daeho Song had risen to become director of the Office of Accountability. His tactical mind now worked to prevent wars rather than fight them. His systems identified potential flashpoints before they ignited. His teams intervened early, when problems could still be solved through pressure and diplomacy rather than force. He maintained a photo on his desk. The new horizon before its destruction. Children playing in a corridor, teachers laughing in a common room, families excited about their new home. He looked at it every morning. A reminder of why his work mattered. Of what happened when good people did nothing. Admiral Hyan Kang had become something unexpected in his retirement. A philosopher king without a kingdom. His writings influenced military academies across the galaxy. But more importantly, they influenced how species thought about power and responsibility. His most famous work, On Justice and the Duty of the Strong, argued a simple thesis. Those with power have an absolute duty to protect those without. This duty cannot be negotiated away, cannot be compromised, cannot be balanced against convenience or comfort. The strong must serve justice or they become the very evil they claim to oppose. The book changed how a generation thought about ethics and warfare. Military officers who once saw conquest as glory now saw protection as purpose. Politicians who once tolerated injustice now faced populations who demanded accountability. Colonel Somin Beck still led special operations. But her missions had changed. Now she rescued victims of trafficking, captured pirates who preyed on civilians, intervened in situations where the guilty thought themselves safe. She had become the galaxy's reminder that there was nowhere to hide. That accountability would find you. She maintained a personal tradition. Every member of her team wore a patch. 3,000 stars on black background, one for each life lost on the new horizon. A reminder of why they did what they did, of who they protected, of what they would never tolerate again. The ceremony at Terra Nova 3 drew representatives from across the galaxy. High Arbiter Zelnari attended, his crystalline form dimmer with age but still dignified. Representative Cora came, now serving as head of the Office of Accountability's Oversight Committee. Chancellor Braun sent his successor, a younger Titanoid who had grown up in the new era Prime Minister Yuna Lee, now in her final term, addressed the gathered crowd. 10 years ago, humanity faced a choice. Accept injustice for the sake of peace, or demand accountability regardless of cost. We chose accountability. That choice led to war, led to sacrifice, led to pain, but it also led to this. She gestured to the crowd. Humans and Thraxians standing together, former enemies working as partners, a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. She paused, looking at the monument. 3,000 people died on the new horizon. We cannot bring them back. We cannot undo that tragedy. But we ensured it meant something. We ensured it changed the galaxy. We ensured that their deaths were the last time anyone would murder innocents and escape accountability. That is not enough. It will never be enough, but it is something Ambassador Minho spoke last. His voice carried across the square. My daughter Hana died on that ship. She was 26. She wanted to teach children, to help them grow, to build a better future. She never got that chance. But because of her death, because of what we did in response, millions of children across the galaxy are safer. Millions of teachers can do their work without fear. Millions of families can travel without wondering if today is the day some monster decides their lives do not matter. He looked directly at the camera broadcasting to the galaxy. We refused to negotiate with murderers. That refusal cost us ships and soldiers, cost us comfort and convenience, cost us the approval of those who preferred stability to justice. But it was worth it. Every life saved, every atrocity prevented, every would-be war criminal who thinks twice before acting. Worth it. All of it. He turned back to the monument. Hana, I hope we made you proud. We did not forget. We did not forgive. We did not negotiate. We demanded justice and we achieved it. The galaxy is better because you died. That is the worst thing I can say and the best thing I can say. It should never have been necessary. But since it was, we made it count. The ceremony ended. People laid flowers and stones at the monument. Humans and Thraxians, species from across galaxy who understood what this place represented. Not just a tragedy, a turning point. The moment the galaxy learned that some principles were absolute that evening, a new transport ship left Terra Nova 3rd. It was called the New Horizon, carrying teachers and students to another colony. Another new beginning. It flew under protection of both human and Thraxian escorts, working together, protecting together, building together. On the bridge of one escort vessel, a young human officer looked at her Thraxian counterpart. They had trained together at the new Joint Academy, had learned the same principles. Protected civilians, hold guilty accountable. Never negotiate with murderers. Do you think it will last? The peace, the partnership? The young officer asked. The Thraxian considered carefully before responding. It will last as long as we remember why it was necessary. As long as we remember what happened when we forgot these principles. As long as we maintain the conviction that justice is not negotiable. The young officer nodded. Then we remember. We teach the next generation to remember. We ensure it never happens again. Exactly. The Thraxian agreed. That is how it lasts. Not through forgetting. Through remembering and choosing better. They watched the New Horizon disappear into hyperspace. Safe protected, a symbol of everything that had changed. Everything that had been fought for. Everything that must be maintained across the galaxy. Other ships traveled safely. Other families built new lives. Other children learned without fear. Not because the galaxy had become perfect, but because humanity had refused to accept imperfection as inevitable. The Galactic Council continued its work. Debates and discussions, trade agreements and border disputes,